Hello everyone, welcome back to the Contested Realm. My name's Jesse Meulman-Marshall. Today we've got a very special treat. We've got the finals from the Sorcery Online League, featuring two really innovative decks and two fantastic players. So today we've got Christian Johnson on Seer and Kevin Chen on Avatar of Air. So we have Kevin Chen at the bottom of the screen on Avatar of Air, and Christian Johnson at the top of the screen playing Seer. And already in Christian's hand, we can see a few of those key pieces that he's going to be looking to use with the Roots of Yggdrasil to threaten Kevin's sites and minions and potentially try and reset the board. We've got that Sinkhole and the Scorched Earth there, both options for destroying the Roots of Yggdrasil to reset the entire realm. Kevin, playing a more aggressive list with Avatar of Earth here, is going to be looking to try and whittle away Christian's life total as quickly as possible, hopefully before he finds that Roots of Yggdrasil. The Seer's ability is going to allow Christian to potentially find the roots a little bit more quickly. We're seeing here a look at the top card of Christian's Atlas and then a decision being made about whether to put that back on the top or the bottom. So using the Seer's ability in combination with the Natural Mulligan, Christian's able to potentially dig for the Roots of Yggdrasil if he wishes to, but instead deciding here this Gnome Hollows on top, taking a moment to choose whether to put it on the bottom maybe and dig for the roots more quickly, but instead electing to keep it there in the hope that it's potentially going to be able to slow down some of Kevin's bigger minions. Because of course Kevin's Avatar of Air list, playing things like Headless Haunt and a couple of the other beefier air minions that are going to try and deal some damage pretty quickly. And we see here a Headless Haunt coming down on turn 2. So an aggressive start for Kevin with a Palibri-Bats on turn 1. So a turn 1 2-power minion and then a turn 2 4-power minion. So already a lot of power down on the board, but this is where that Gnome Hollows is going to come in come in clutch really for Christian. If Kevin does roll with the Headless Haunt, perhaps a 7, for example, or an 8, and land next to the Gnome Hollows or on the Gnome Hollows, either the Headless Haunt is not going to be able to teleport at all if it rolls an 8 and lands on the Gnome Hollows, or it's going to land next to it and not be able to attack into it. So by playing out the Gnome Hollows there, Christian reducing the likelihood that Kevin, if he did have a Headless Haunt or any other high power minion, was going to be able to get in for damage early in the game. We'll see if that pans out or if the Haunt manages to teleport around the side of the Hollows and hit one of Christian's other sites. So Christian playing out there a Pillar of Xeros as well. Not the greatest timing for seeing a pillar, opting to choose to keep the Sinkhole in hand, potentially for later on for roots, but also potentially just as a surprise factor way to take out one of Kevin's sites if Christian decides that's what he wants to do. Because of course the Scorched Earth there has some redundancy in terms of the Roots of Yggdrasil combo, but also there is an argument I think for Christian to just try and use cards in hand like Sinkhole and Scorched Earth to just stay in the game if Kevin does have a particularly aggressive start. So Palibri-Bats coming in with a Devil's Egg. So last turn we saw the Avatar of Air push the bats forward and then the bats burrowed, and this turn the Palibri-Bats are moving up underground and planting a Devil's Egg, a little bit of a landmine there underneath the Gnome Hollows. Christian having a look at the top of the spellbook and then opting to draw a site from the Atlas, playing out a Mirage, and then opting to play the Scorched Earth. So saying, look, I'm willing to lose a site here. I'm losing my Scorched Earth and my site to take out your Palibri-Bats and your Devil's Egg. But really the Devil's Egg there representing one of the main ways that Kevin was going to really threaten Christian's life total over the next few turns. 2 life loss per turn cycle is a pretty significant loss of life that Christian was staring down, plus the 2 damage from the Palibri-Bats. The Headless Haunt teleports over next to the Mirage, so a much better roll for Kevin this time. And then with a Tor's Hammer Trinket, comes in for 5 damage. So a big chunk of damage there, taken out of Christian's life total, down from 19 to 14. So really, at this point, Kevin's saying, look, if I roll well with my Headless Haunt, 3 turns away from putting you to Death's Door. I've also got this Cloud Spirit now as another 2-power minion. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to slow me down enough that I'm not going to be able to do that over the next 3 turns? Christian takes another look at the top of the spellbook and draws an Autumn Unicorns. That's a good blocker. That's going to mean that if the Headless Haunt does come in again, although there is the Tor's Hammer Trinket, of course, but if Headless Haunt comes in on its own, that's if Kevin rolls well, then the Autumn Unicorn is going to be in a position to block and trade. But that Tor's Hammer Trinket already dealing 1 extra damage and potentially proving clutch on a board situation like this, where the Autumn Unicorn is threatening to successfully block and trade with the Headless Haunt. The Tor's Hammer Trinket says, no, you can't. So Kevin rolls here, I think, is that a 20? No, it's a 18. So heading down onto the same side as the Cloud Spirit. And Kevin really thinking here, there's always the option to push the Headless Haunt with the Avatar of Air. So Kevin plays his own Sinkhole underneath the Autumn Unicorn. The Cloud Spirit's got the ability to move pretty much anywhere on this board at this point. So Kevin opting to push the Headless Haunt with the Avatar of Air. So that turns out to be a really good roll. Landing right on top of the Avatar, giving Kevin the ability to push the Headless Haunt without spending an action, so without tapping the Haunt. Then attach the Tor's Hammer Trinket. Thinking about attaching the Tor's Hammer Trinket, I think Kevin not quite realizing here perhaps that he doesn't have enough mana to make follow-up. So Kevin deciding actually not to play the Sinkhole, changing his mind, and playing out the Tor's Hammer Trinket and a Grapple Shot. So that's utilizing the full 4 mana there. Perhaps forgetting when he played the Sinkhole that he had actually lost the Bottomless Pit, so he'd gone backwards on mana the turn before. Finding the 3rd tower, which is going to give the mana boost, and then the Headless Haunt is able to use the Grapple Shot to take out the Unicorn, get in for 5 itself, and then 2 more damage from the Cloud Spirit. So Kevin really putting on the pressure here to Christian. And Christian, in hand there, we can see a Common Sense, an Amazon Warriors, and a Firebolt. So Firebolts might allow Christian, with only 3 mana here on the board, to take out the Cloud Spirit, or to potentially Common Sense for a 2 mana spell. But off the top, Christian elects to draw a sight and hits a Quagmire, which is a really fantastic hit here, because playing it on that middle site is actually going to disable both, or rather not disable, but immobilize both of Kevin's minions. Now, Quagmire functions a little bit funnily with Headless Haunt because it immobilizes minions whilst they're occupying the nearby sites. It's actually going to stop the Haunt from being able to move, attack, or use any basic abilities whilst it's on those sites. But if Kevin were to teleport with the Haunt at the start of turn, the Haunt would then be unimmobilized, but because all of Kevin's sites are nearby to the Quagmire, that would actually be not much use. So even if Kevin rolled perfectly and ended up in the top right-hand corner with the Headless Haunt, it wouldn't be able to attack onto the Pillar of Xeros because it would get immobilized as soon as it entered the site. So the Haunt moves back. It's still nearby to the Quagmire, so it's going to be immobilized. And of course, the Common Sense for a Firebolt, so Common Sense for a Berry, and using the Firebolts in hand last turn, I should have said, Christian to take out the Cloud Spirit. So that Quagmire was an enormous play in the context of this game. For 0 mana, Christian was able to, on a key turn when Kevin was threatening 7 damage with those minions next turn, that was lethal. Christian was able to deal with them both for 0 mana and still progress his own game plan, removing the Cloud Spirit with the Firebolts and also Common Sensing for a Berry for one of the other threats. So Kevin moving up the Avatar of Air here, playing out a Sinkhole, electing not to detonate the Sinkhole, so not to deny any mana from Christian. And then we're seeing a Land Surveyor into a site that's going to take Christian up to 5 mana, which is the perfect amount with the Land Surveyor for him to be able to bury that Headless Haunt as well if he wishes to. So a really good comeback here, a great sequence of 2 turns from being completely on the back foot and looking very much outgunned on 7 health with only 3 sites in play at the start of the turn. Christian's really turned the tables here on Kevin and eliminated all of the threats, built up his own mana, and left Kevin actually behind in the mana race here now. So what's Kevin got in hand to try and combat this? We also know from Christian's hand there that there's an Amazon Warriors coming next turn. So Kevin untaps, got the Avatar of Air, got the maneuverability. So this turn that Avatar of Air is going to be able to launch itself and launch an attack, no problem. So Kevin getting Christian down to 2, and then using that Avatar of Air to launch itself forward 1 space with its ability, and then attack in onto the step, which is Christian's home site, for 2 damage. So now threatening and saying, if you don't have an answer with that 1 card left in your hand, then my Avatar is going to put you down to Death's Door next turn. So Christian has a look at the top card with the Seer, elects to take what looks like a Root Spider. The Seer then taps for a site, draws a Sinkhole, and the Amazon Warriors comes down. So at this point, Kevin is a couple of spaces away from an air site, only has 4 mana. Although Christian's on 2, there's now these Amazon Warriors right in the way. So Kevin's Avatar of Air ability is offline. He's a couple of turns away from being able to get it back online, and he doesn't really have, at this stage, a clear avenue to get Christian down to Death's Door. What he'd need to do is something like a Rolling Boulder. There you go, that'll do. So Rolling Boulder puts Christian down to Death's Door. When I say Kevin doesn't have a plan, what I meant was there's no plan on the board. Doesn't mean there wasn't one in hand. I was going to say it could be something like a Tor's Hammer Trinket into a Grapple Shot for 4 mana, but Rolling Boulder for 4 will do it as well. That being said, Rolling Boulder is, of course, one of the most effective finishers available in Kevin's deck, with a Lightning Bolt already having been spent and a Grapple Shot already having been spent as well. There may well be more of those available in the deck to Kevin at this point. Christian will be looking at that and thinking, it's really likely that there are going to be some more finishes. But Kevin has had to expend quite a few cards from hand to get Christian down to Death's Door, in terms of cards that he would like to still have in hand when he gets him there. The optimal sort of line of play for these sorts of decks, from Kevin's perspective, is to use minions to do all that early damage and then have these spells to finish things off later. So it remains to be seen whether Kevin's going to be able to retrieve that boulder and put the Seer in harm's way. So what we see here is an attack from the Amazon Warriors chunking Kevin down, a move across from the Seer, and then a Root Spider above ground to act as a bit of a blocker and stop Kevin from being able to just remove the Land Surveyor and then attack across with the Avatar of Air, which of course itself is able to deal the death blow and is in quite a good position to do so. So Kevin, if he had, for example, a Lightning Bolt, could simply take out the Land Surveyor and then attack across with the Avatar of Air. The Root Spider would still be able to defend on that square if it was burrowed, but I guess Christian just feeling that having it above ground gives it a little bit more flexibility in terms of where it's able to defend. And also acts as, of course, a lightning rod for those lightning bolts. If Kevin were to have another one, it turns it from a 100% into a 50-50. So a Palibri Bats and a Highland Falconer here, giving Kevin a decent opportunity to potentially retrieve that Rolling Boulder and use it next turn. Of course, they aren't able to roll the Boulder this turn because they have Summoning Sickness. The Avatar of Air moving back to try and get closer to an air site, I presume, to then either launch itself or one of Kevin's minions into a killing blow position. The Sinkhole getting detonated to take out the Mirage and reduce Christian's mana down by 1. Kevin, I think they're willing to sacrifice that 4th mana of his own in order to keep Christian back down to 5 next turn, assuming that Christian elects to play another site, having a site in hand, or 4 mana on the board right now. So Christian now has a Bury and a Gigantism. Bury, of course, not going to do a lot on the Palibri Bats itself because it can burrow, but Bury is not only able to hit minions, it's also able to hit artifacts. So it could be something that Christian uses to take out the Rolling Boulder. Gigantism also a really big threat right now. That's 11 damage off just the Amazon Warriors if Christian were to play it, 12 with the Land Surveyor, up to 14 with the Root Spider. So if the Root Spider were in an attacking position this turn, unfortunately it's not because Kevin moved back. Lucky for Kevin, because otherwise Kevin could potentially have been looking at Death's Door that turn with the Gigantism. But as it is, Christian elects to bury the Rolling Boulder. Now, of course, the Bats can go down and retrieve it, but that's not really an efficient use of time at this stage. I think Kevin's looking to try and close things out a little bit more quickly than that. So another Sinkhole comes down, puts Kevin back down to 2 mana. So at this point, Kevin elected to go down from 4 to 3, which still allows him to play things like Grapple Shot, but going back down to 2 now is starting to get a little bit dire in terms of the mana department. And this Amazon Warriors is just following the Avatar of Air around very annoyingly. And it also means that with that tower being destroyed, Kevin's now an extra to an air site, so his Avatar's ability is also harder for him to get back online. It's another turn away from being able to get that back online, which is super frustrating for Kevin, I can imagine, at this point. Of course, a blink would still get him onto the Gothic tower that's there, but I don't think he's necessarily wanting to spend the blink, even if he had it on his Avatar at this point, getting it down to get its ability online on the tower. Although that would take out the Amazon Warriors for another turn, in that the Amazon Warriors wouldn't be in a position to actually attack next turn. So it wouldn't be too bad if he did have that. So instead, Kevin moving across the Avatar of Air, thinking about whether to attack. I think he has attacked the Land Surveyor there. And Christian electing not to block. So Christian had the option to block with the Root Spider that's untapped, could have come in and dealt 2 damage to Kevin's Avatar and saved the Land Surveyor, but then he would have been exposing himself if Kevin had a Lightning Bolt in hand to the 100% Lightning Bolt hit. So Christian playing defensively, electing to keep the Root Spider back there on top of the Avatar. The Palibri Bats moving up onto the Gothic Tower, and the Highland Falconer also moving up as well. Neither of them are going to be able to defend if the Amazon Warriors attacks in on the Avatar of Air again. So Kevin's going to be going down to, at most, 3 life this turn. He's going to be taking the 5 from the Amazon Warriors, put it that way. But if the Gigantism comes down, then Kevin is going to be going to Death's Door this turn. So we see a Petrosian Cavalry, which with 4 mana is also enough to put for Christian to put Kevin to Death's Door without spending the Gigantism, so he can play the Petrosian Cavalry, attack with the Root Spider, the Amazon Warriors, and the Petrosian Cavalry if he wished to, but instead electing to use the Gigantism on the Root Spider for the Death's Door. And now the Amazon Warriors untapped, ready to defend if Kevin is able to get himself over onto the Seer's site for an attack. And a Lighthouse comes down, which then allows Kevin to finish the game with a grapple shot. So incredible, because he was on a rubble, he's able to play the Lighthouse, use the Avatar of Air's ability to push himself onto the same side as the Seer, and then he's got the 3 mana to grapple shot. So super incredible finish there from Kevin, using the rubble to his advantage, and the fact that he was actually on a neutral site, draws, finds the air site for the Avatar of Air, and that's where the power of the Avatar of Air's ability being an ability that doesn't require you to tap, Kevin was able to actually tap to play a site and still use his Avatar's ability all in the same turn. An incredible finish and a really tight game. Christian fought back from a position where it looked like he was going to Death's Door potentially the following turn. He was able to slow things down with the Quagmire, remove Kevin's threats, get back into a position where he actually had the ascendancy in terms of board position, but the trickiness of the Avatar of Air able to get Kevin into a position to deal the death blow once he had got Christian down to Death's Door in that early phase of the game. So well done to both Christian and Kevin. Hope you enjoyed the game. We'll be back with more gameplay footage in the contested realm very soon. Thanks for watching.